Hey everybody, welcome back to Faraday Research. It's Thursday evening. It's just after 10 o'clock my time, and I decided to pull out the pulse motor because I wanted to check out how it works on the scope that my good friend there, Aaron, has donated to me. So yeah, this is it. This is the scope he got me. It's beautiful. It's got really good reviews and seems to be working really well. So, anyways, I wanted to do some testing tonight. Before we get into it, if you haven't become a member, bottom right hand corner. And also, if you like the video tonight, give me a thumbs up if you like the video. So, let's get right into it. So, I wanted to see what kind of a waveform and what kind of back EMF that I'm actually getting. Now, this test is basically more or less to see the waveform, not so much the voltages. As far as in my past tests with this particular light that I'm using, it takes 60 volts DC to get it lit up, equivalent to 120 volts AC. All right, so it's 120 volts AC at 350 milliamps to get it running. That's at an AC current. So if we go DC, because the pulse generator runs on a DC pulse, if I'm getting 60 volts, that means that light is gonna, go on, right? Because it's basically half of AC is DC power. So the way I see it lighting up tonight, I'm probably exceeding 60 volts, more or less, probably closer to 70, maybe even 75 volts DC. But that's pulsed. So in translation, we're looking at about 130, 140 volts AC if you're using a true AC waveform. So I'm not too worried about the voltages. It's the waveform that I'm getting. So right now I got my voltmeter set at power supply set at 8.3 volts. Now this is about as low as I can run the motor with all the electronics. Now, if I had the electronics on a separate power supply and it was just basically the coil running, I could get it down to probably about 3 volts. It doesn't take that much power, but my output power is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So I'm running at the lowest possible voltage I could run it and actually make the components all run. So I'm going to fire it up here, and then we're going to take a look at the waveform. It's pretty interesting. All right, so we're going to fire it up. Let's go this direction here. All right. Now, to me, it's very, very well lit up. It's blinking. It is blinking, but I'm only running at 8.3 volts at 100 milliamps. That's all it takes. It's very little power, extremely low power. But this thing is lit up, so that means I have to be hitting at least 60 volts DC in order to get that thing to light up. So that 60 volts is coming from the high voltage spikes. All right, now let's look at the waveform. All right, so what we're getting is power's coming, and before it spikes, it dives. Then it shoots right up, high voltage spike, then comes back down, but goes below again. So after it goes below, then it goes back up again to zero. So we're getting a dive, spike, dive, and then back to zero. So that means we're getting the back EMF. That's showing the back EMF. And sometimes the back EMF spikes are quite high, as you can see. All right. So that's telling me a lot. Now that's at 1 millisecond intervals. Let's see. Let's go here. Okay, so this is set at play around with the dials here. I'm still kind of learning how to use the damn thing because it's not easy. So, but it seems to be giving me pretty typical spikes the way I'm seeing it. See how every now and then you get that one transient spike that goes way down? I think that is the negative energy that's coming in. Because if I wasn't getting that negative energy, this thing would start to heat up, and it doesn't. It stays stone cold. It doesn't heat up at all. Now, it's not running that fast either. So it's probably running right now at about maybe 300 RPM, maybe less, 250 RPM. So I'm not going very fast. Now, let's, for sake of argument, let's bump up the power right up to 12 volts. Okay, we got about 12.5 volts and 170 milliamps. So now the light is completely lit up. To you it's blinking, but for me it's almost totally solid and it's fully lit up. I'll even shut the light off and you can see. Oh, now it doesn't show it. See? Fully lit up. Now look at the waveform I'm getting. Very interesting waveform. It seems, I don't know if it's because I'm not got everything kind of figured out on the scope, but it seems like I'm getting a lot of transients in between the spikes. So that could be a number of things. It could be feedback. See, I got it hooked up actually right to the coil itself. So it's picking up, I got the triggering set up at 100 millivolts. So if it senses 100 millivolts, it can register it. So yeah, so it's giving me some pretty interesting transients, but it does show me the back EMF spiking, which is very typical in these motors. So yeah, as time goes on, I'm going to get better with this scope. It's not the easiest thing to learn how to use. There's a lot of functions in this thing. This thing is actually got a very, very good rating on YouTube right now. So it's the DSO 02D10. And this also has a signal generator built in it. So yeah, I'm liking what I see. It's pretty interesting to see how this thing's performing on the scope. Yeah, I'm having quite a bit of fun with this. Actually, I'm going to spin it in the other direction. Now, I've done some modifications. Oh, the transients I was talking to you about before. I'm figuring the transient spikes actually could be coming from the spark gap switch, the relay switch. So because I have that would make sense why I got those little transients in between, is because of the feedback that I'm getting from that spark gap. So that's very possible too. Now, if I hooked it up to a MOSFET, I probably wouldn't not have those transients. So now you can see the waveform now. And some of the spikes are going like right off the scope. Like they're like going way, way up. And this light is like fully lit up. Like if I shut the light off, you got a little bit of blinking on the video, but for me it's like pretty solid and it's fully lit. Now I'm using 12.7 volts, and it's only taking 120 milliamps. That's nothing. It's not much at all. Now, I did do some numbers earlier. I want to show you. I did a bench test earlier. So, let's take a look at it here. So I did the low power test. So, I set it at 10.3 volts DC at 0.09 milliamps, 90 milliamps. That's the input. So that turns out to 0.824 watts. All right, on the outside where the light is, I was getting a lower voltage, but my current was dramatically higher. I'm generating current 230 milliamps out. So my watts was 2.208 watts compared to my input was only 0.824 watts in. So I'm making a huge gain. Now to light this light bulb, it's 4.5 watts at 350 milliamps. So I'm getting some extra power here in watts that's being able to make the difference to get to the 4.5 watts. So I found that kind of interesting. So yeah, those are the numbers that I did in my test earlier. So you can see a dramatic from my input to my output. So my voltage was less, but the amount of current I was pumping out was quite a bit more, 0.09 compared to 230. So yeah, I'm making some interesting progress with this, and she's running great now. I did that little mod to the switch and she's running way faster. So right now it's running about 900 RPM, 900 to 1,000. So here's a little view of the inside. There's the proximity sensor. They use them in 3D printers, and that's what I'm using to trigger the auto relay switch. Yep. So I figure I can give you guys a good view. Yeah, so that's what I've been working on. Just trying to see how this motor is actually performing. And it's running really good. Really, really good. Anyways, it's getting late here. I think that's it for tonight. Any questions or comments below? I'll have all the links in the description. Don't forget, if you haven't become a Patreon, help me out. I've been out of work, so every penny helps. Give me a thumbs up for the video. All your questions, comments below. And yeah, we'll see everybody soon. Have a good night.